Hi everyone, I'm Joel DeZenzio and I'm back for another video to talk about some of our service components. In this particular video I want to talk about our rated games section. The only service level that can see the rated games section is the professional subscriber service level. So there's really three areas in the rated games section. We have the odds profiler, we also have the my picks section, and we also have the ratings, or what's referred to as the LPR ratings. Then there's also at the top here on the right hand side, you can click on the help tab, and this help section will give you an idea of what some of the terms mean on this particular page and how to use the services on this page. Under the My Pick section, there's a click to toggle pick notes. If you click that, it's going to give you an understanding of how I use different scenarios to make my rated picks using the same tools that you'll have access to on this page. So I'm going to start with the odds profiler. One thing I've learned from wagering in Vegas is that you really are concentrating on two areas. You're concentrating on risk and value. On the right hand side, where we have the win probability percentage, this concentrates on risk. And on the left hand side with the red money line, that concentrates on value. One thing I wanted to do when I look at a snapshot of games for the week is I want to be able to kind of line up the risk and the value for each game. So what I've done is this red dotted line on the bottom here basically is a counter for a minus 225 money line. And the green dotted line is a counter for 70% win probability. So if I want value, I want the money line to be over this red dotted line. That means that the money line is minus 225 on up to, say, plus 600. And the green dotted line, I want the green line above that to be greater than 70%. If I see that both of the markers are above the green and red lines, then that means this is a good value and a low risk game. The nice thing about this system is it's not a definitive mark for what you might want to do. As you're looking through this, you're going to have your own profile. You're going to have your own risk appetite. You might find that you don't mind having the probability just under the green line, or if it's just touching, or maybe it's at 65% and the value is way up here. Well, then you might want to take a little bit more risk and work with those kinds of games. This is really up to you. I'm going to skip the My Pick section for a second, and I'm going to go straight down to the rating system. So one thing I wanted to do with this rating section is over time I've built a lot of probability components, and I wanted to group them together and keep them in one area, and that's what I've done here. All of the probability factors on the site, if they're grouped, they can be rated, and that's where LPR comes into view here. LPR is loss profile rating, and the way I designed most of the probability components is I wanted to account for losses and mitigating losses throughout the season. So the higher this LPR number, the higher the probability, or should be the higher the probability. There will be some instances where you're dealing with half a point to 1 point, and you might see that the probability dips 5–10%. But for the most part, the higher the LPR game, the better. Here's an interesting matchup. So the Seattle at St. Louis game on the first week shows 100% win probability. And you might say to yourself, well, what about that, any team can beat any team on any given Sunday? Well, this right here is a 4 to 5 year marker, and it states that whenever there's been a 24 LPR team, they've never lost. So if Seattle were to lose, it would be the first time ever in the last 4+ years that a team with an LPR mark of 24 or higher has lost. The points section is the scoring compiler. I briefly showed it on the head-to-head matchup, but the scoring compiler takes each of these two teams and it looks at their strengths and tries to find similarities over time and groups those scores and averages them out. What I mainly am concerned about when I look at the points section is whether or not the points are in favor of Seattle, which they are, and then secondly, whether or not the points differential is 6 plus, and in this particular case, it is 9. So that is fantastic. Now there is a win probability percentage for these points right next to them. Then we also have the risk, which is very low, 6.1%. And the winning probability for that is almost 78%. And then the head-to-head says that Seattle is going to have 67.5% of all the scoring in the game, and that's also almost a 72%. Then the strength indicators, you can see that Seattle is a much stronger team than St. Louis, and the win probability there is about 67%. And then the last two columns are the offense versus the defense, and I'm basically looking at the strength indicators. So Seattle's offense is 148 versus St. Louis's defense at 105, so they have an advantage. But look at St. Louis's offense at 28. It's miserable, and it's going against a very tough defense in Seattle. It's at 160. And here we are at my picks section. Seattle, Cincinnati, Green Bay, Carolina, Miami, and Denver matchups. I like these matchups. On the plays, I have them all on the money line, and currently here are the money lines. The stretch and the one that I'll be watching is this Green Bay versus Chicago matchup. It's at minus 225. Don't like the value on this. It's right at the tail end of where I like to keep the value. So at minus 225, this could shift to say minus 250 3 hours before game time, in which case it would be knocked off my list. Whenever a team on the left-hand side here that's favored on our system is an odds maker favorite, meaning they have this little negative symbol next to the number, this means that I'm going to take the money line. So as long as it's in value range, I'm going to take the money line, because all they have to do is win. They don't have to cover by X number of points. You actually decrease your odds by trying to cover for X number of points. However, if any of these teams were a Vegas underdog or an odds maker underdog and had a plus symbol next to them, in this particular case, I would take the ATS, because they don't need to win. They just need to lose within X number of points. So again, trying to increase odds as you're doing your wagers is very, very important. You don't want to look at trying to cover this. And that concludes this video for the NFL rated games section. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a holler via the email address that I showcased in the first video. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.